Hello, welcome to the Dark Bestiary. My name's Fen, and in this chapter we're going to be talking about the Butcher. The Butcher is the first nemesis that players will encounter in their experience of playing Kingdom Death, and it's very clearly designed to be that first boss, that first big moment of, ooh, wow. It often turns out to be the biggest hurdle for a new player. Kingdom Death isn't a particularly gentle game, it's not very forgiving, and the Butcher is a big part of that. I'm going to say, despite having a design that is over 10 years old now, doesn't that make you feel old? The Butcher is still one of the best Nemesis monsters that's ever been designed for this game. I'm amazed with just how fresh and exciting it is to fight every single time, and it's quite hard to justify not having it in a campaign. Although the Manhunter, which we will talk about soon, does a pretty good job of proving its worth as well. In this video, we're going to talk a bit about the Butcher. What is it? Where's it come from? Why does it turn up completely unannounced? And then we'll go through all of the cards, discuss the ones that are very scary and dangerous, the ones which aren't, and the various strategies that one can employ to increase your chances of beating this beast. But before we get there, let's just talk a little bit about the lore. So, Butchers are, or at least were, survivors. They are a kind of in-universe extreme version of what some survivors can become. Mostly speculation on my part, although I think the evidence is very much there due to the design of them. Butchers are a form of Forsaker. You can take a look on the Kingdom Death store. They, as I record this right now, they are still selling Forsaker models, but Forsakers were intended to be one of the character classes players would use in the Kingdom Death Labyrinth game, which I just want to say, I really hope once the current Kickstarter finally closes, Labyrinth comes out. That's what I would like to see, is Team Death work on how they incorporate all of the things and all they've learned into a dungeon crawler, because I think a dungeon crawler with these boss mechanics and this gear grid system would be incredibly engaging and fun. So, we do have, thanks to the store, a little bit of a blurb on what Forsakers are. So, the Forsakers lose or give up their grasp on sanity in trade for unbridled power and stamina. They see nothing but suffering and pitiful struggle around them. Incapable of compassion, they channel their despair into unchecked, furious berserk state that makes the Forsaker dangerous to friend and foe alike. And in addition to that, let's very quickly read the Butcher's introductory lore. Okay. There once was a man who could not hide his fear. He wore a mask that transformed his cowardice to rage. In turn, the man transformed into a monster. All that remained was a devouring fury that stalked the night, collecting the fearful faces of others. There's also a appearance of the Forsaker / Butcher in the See the Truth event, which I'm not going to go through and read here, but that's the Max Courage event. The key thing to sort of just say is these creatures once were men and women. They once were humans, and now they're something else. They are vicious, raging, frenzied, violent creatures, but also they are deeply filled with despair and fear down below all of that. Of course, there is more to that, because the other thing that these are is a reference and a trope. They're a reference to the 1980s slasher killer. In particular, Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees, both of whom wear white masks as they kill. And I think very much in particular, Jason Voorhees is a strong influence on this, because Jason is fueled by rage and anger. Michael Myers tends to feel a little bit more detached, but there's elements of both in them. Like, you wouldn't be shocked to see someone like this as a killer in a horror movie. And that's why the Butcher just turns up out of nowhere. I think there's only 2 monsters, Nemesis monsters, that turn up with no introduction whatsoever. And they are the Butcher and the Gold Smoke Knight. I think the Gold Smoke Knight needs an introduction. That's definitely something that, consider how important that creature is to the game setting, it does need a bit more work. I hope that Campaigns of Death recontextualizes People of the Lantern and gives us a new timeline with an introductory event for the Gold Smoke Knight. But the Butcher, on the other hand, doesn't need that. This guy turns up on the edge of the settlement out of nowhere and is just looking to kill people and smash things, and that is absolutely perfect. Butchers primarily use these cleavers as their forms of weapon, and they attack with like a lot of fury, but not much discipline. They tend to seek to kill through trauma, but primarily bleed and attacks. And the Butcher does have one of the scariest attacks in the entire game, and has 2 copies of it. Another little interesting element is these lanterns. So, as I read in the lore, the Butcher peels the faces of their victims and drapes them across these lanterns. I find it quite interesting because, well, first of all, it's putting a bunch of faces on its back, which is kind of indicating, trying to scare things and make them afraid to attack from behind. Like some animals will have that kind of extra face thing going on, and this is a little bit of that. But also, there's a connection between the Butchers and the Lanterns that's quite interesting. They seem to be capable of a form of teleportation involving lanterns. Now, we know lanterns are super important. They're not just things lying around. They appear to have biological elements to them. They appear to be bioluminescent. They might possibly be linked to the souls of survivors, which is hinted at in the Lanternism philosophy. I think that is probably the case, but we'll see. Lanterns could also be linked to the Parasite Queen. We don't know. We need to find out. But with the Butchers, they use them as a tool, and they use them as a form of protection and a form of trophies, and this is even part of their mechanics. So that is our little lore discussion type thing. I think everything about this, outside of the model being a bit old, is fantastic. Like, this is such a thematically gripping and fantastic monster. Okay, let's get over now to look at all the cards. These are all the bits. You'll see on the side we have the Killenium Butcher. I will go through the Killenium Butcher here as well and sort of talk a bit about the variation that it has, which is frankly really good. But let's start with our look at the Showdown. So we can see the Butcher has 9 toughness, then 12, and then 15. 9, that's a pretty big number for when the Butcher turns up, but it's not insurmountable. 12 is a bit sort of lower. This 15 is way higher than it appears to be. We'll get into that when we talk about the trait cards. Showdown, it takes place kind of on the edge of the settlement. You'll often see this with Nemesis Showdowns, that stone columns turn up a bit more in the Showdowns as kind of a preset thing. Seems like survivors typically gravitate to places where there are stone columns, which, you know, is fair enough. We also get 1 extra random terrain card that can provide some sort of additional assistance. We deploy on 1 of the long edges, and because we're defending our home, we go first, which actually it's a little bit of a tricky wrinkle, because survivors have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movement. And so they generally can't get to the butcher immediately without either dashing of some kind, or and or having access to ranged capabilities. This is one of those cheeky things where the butcher's not that fast, but it's standing just out of reach on the first turn, and it's making you go first. So unless you bum rush it and use stuff like dash or bows and things like that, it quite often still gets the advantage. So it's almost not thematic, but it stands there menacingly doing nothing for a moment. Victory, worth mentioning this bit here. You gain monster level of axe proficiency levels. This is nice because you can just be given to survivors who normally wouldn't have any kind of proficiency at all. So one of those interesting things, and generally a good practice that I follow, is I like to take fresh survivors in against the first butcher to get a bunch of axe proficiency, and or if I'm like the high level ones, I'll bring my axe trainers, proficiency specialists, whatever, along to try and get that benefit. On the rewards side of things, we roll a dice add in the butcher's level. This can be increased further by the death blow. We have the butcher vanishes in a flash of blinding light. This would likely be the butcher not dying here and using its lantern teleportation thing to get away. Or perhaps it's throwing a big giant smoke bomb, flashing, blinding everyone, and then running off and hiding behind one of the pillars before it gets away. Who knows? Either could be true. The second one's kind of funnier. Higher rolls here, we start getting broken lanterns. That makes sense. This 1d5 broken lanterns, that'll go straight to settlement storage because there's not that many of those cards in the basic resource deck. It's got a load of lanterns on it, makes sense. Then we can get the Butcher's Cleavers. We'll take a look at those. And this is really neat here. This hunk of living flesh, if you get a 10 to 12, which allow you to regrow a dismembered limb immediately. This is not often do you get to regrow dismembered limbs, so this is really useful. And then the big prize, which is the Forsaken Mask rare gear, falls to the ground. We've got a little extra benefit here. If you defeat a level 3 butcher, you roll a dice on a 4+, you get a Forsaken Mask. And you get it automatically if you have Memento Mori. Considering how late the level 3 butcher comes, that's pretty reasonable. I should actually talk about the timeline moments that each of these turn up. It first appears in Lantern Year 4, then it'll return, or another one will turn up in Lantern Year 16, and then the final encounter is in Lantern Year 23. So first one you'll encounter, and your first 3 Lantern Years really should be spent preparing for this monster to turn up. Quick note on the defeat here. Butcher rampages through the settlement. Everyone escapes into the darkness until it leaves, but all resources in the settlement storage are lost repairing the destruction. Again, a little bit of reference to how angry serial killers, slasher killers, serial killer, slasher killer, slashers will smash the heck out of things as well, getting frustrated with no one to kill. The main way to counterplay this is in the year before the butcher turns up, you should be spending every single resource that you do not mind losing. That is as simple as that. It's similar to how you handle the Gorm. If you can't afford to lose it, then use it. If you can't use it and you really can't afford to lose it, then you better win. Okay, so just a quick bit of this. So this art piece is just one of the best moods in the game. You can see the settlement burning in the background. These survivors looking in despair as these ones here have their faces put onto the mask in kind of almost a solemn moment. There's a very calm, serene look to the butcher, temporarily sated from its victory. This artwork is also used to make the Killenium Butcher model, as you can see. It's a fantastic model, and it's a big part of why I want to see the normal Butcher get a refresh and an update, because the detail on this thing in plastic is crisp as heck. It is gorgeous. A real mood piece. Absolutely fantastic. A lot of people to paint, but still, wouldn't change it for the world. It's a great model. Okay, let's get onto our dashboard. So at level 1, the Butcher has 7 basics and 5 advanced, meaning it has a total of 13 wounds. It has 5 movement, so you can outpace it, dash cancel it. You can certainly make some of its attacks each turn fail to connect. And that movement is something you can take advantage of, but the way the Butcher gets around it is via its traits. At level 2, it goes up to 10 basic, meaning it now has 16 wounds, no increase in the advance, and its toughness climbs up by 3 to 12. Its speed goes up base 1, damage goes up base 1, and we have now an additional trait. I'll go through the traits in a moment. Level 3, this is a big one. It gains an extra basic card and 5 extra advanced cards. It goes up to 15 toughness, it gives plus 3 speed, plus 3 damage. And it gets plus 2 accuracy tokens. And on top of all of that, it gets some really nasty traits. The instinct, this one's actually quite weak, and you can take a bit of advantage of it. So if the instinct triggers, it turns to face the closest survivor, and then that survivor suffers 1 brain damage per monster level. So basically, if there are no viable targets, the Butcher will stand there and look menacing and wait for its victims to do something. Its basic action gives us a bit of a look at how the Butcher wants to behave. It picks target closest survivor in field of view. This is actually unusual. We'll get into it, but the Butcher normally picks threats rather than closest survivor. It tends to want to go after threats and anything it doesn't perceive as a threat. It normally leaves it alone, but the basic action is a bit different. Stat wise though, this is our bread and butter. This lets us see everything about how the Butcher's offense is planning to run out. It's got 2 speed, that's average. 4 plus accuracy, that's really bad for a monster. 1 damage, standard, considering it's node 1, and then after damage, target gains 1 bleeding token. So this gives us our other vector that the Butcher is looking to attack us on. It's looking to bleed you out. Its bleed isn't massively high numbers, but it does trigger a fair amount. You absolutely should be taking bleed management into every single showdown against the Butcher. At least 1 set of bandages. Bandages is super effective, and if the Butcher's having trouble cutting through someone's armour, quite often it'll kill them through bleed, so being able to mop that off can keep your front line in the battle way longer. And because the Butcher generally doesn't really target non-threats, you can actually get away with a survivor popping a fecal salve, rubbing monster poop all over their face, and then the Butcher will generally leave them alone unless it basic actions until they attack. Doesn't consider them a threat, they're an idiot with a stinky face. Traits. So, Berserker and Frenzied Berserker. This is how the Butcher makes up for its lower movement. It draws an additional AI card every monster turn, and when it upgrades to Frenzied Berserker, which, if we look over here, happens at level 2, it starts dealing with 3 cards every turn. That's a lot, and this is how the Butcher also overcomes its lack of accuracy. It does it through quantity. It doesn't have a quality of attacks, it has a large amount of them instead. The main ways of handling this, or the main primary way, is evasion. Because the Butcher isn't very accurate to start with, evasion lets you just reduce the amount of hits it's going to deliver over an entire turn. And as we'll see, we really do want to have good evasion, because there's a couple of attacks that we don't want them to hit at all. Our next trait is Fast Target. This is kind of a plus and a minus. Essentially, at the start of each monster's turn, you reshuffle the Butcher's hit location deck, and it clarifies a reshuffle includes deck and discard pile, which is helpful for other mechanics. It's why I say a reshuffle does everything unless you're told otherwise. The key thing it does is it sort of constantly keeps the cards you've dealt with coming back into play. It actually overall reduces the odds of you hitting the trap over the entire showdown, because you don't have the inevitability towards it, but it does mean you can hit the trap like multiple times in a row, even if you've like just chipped a few cards away. It can just pop back in. It's chaotic is the main thing I'm trying to say here. This is a very chaotic trait. It's not necessarily bad, and it is one more thing to think about when you're playing with the Butcher. It's kind of lucky that the Butcher doesn't have a card that shuffles his AI back in, because that would be a nightmare. This next trait is Dreaded Trophies. This is the other gimmick of the Butcher, which is whenever a survivor dies, you place their miniature on this card, and it gains bonuses based on the number of miniatures on here. First one, all attack profiles gain after damage, bleed 1. Note if it already has bleed 1, it's not getting bleed 1 and bleed 1. Bleed 1 plus bleed 1 is just bleed 1. At 2, it gets plus 1 movement token and plus 1 speed token. That's pretty bad. Speed is very dangerous. The movement suddenly means it's kind of harder to even dash cancel one of its attacks, one of its AI cards. And then at 3, it gets plus 2 damage tokens, and basically it is going to end this showdown if you do not close it out very, very quickly. Most showdowns, if you get down to one survivor versus the monster, can be tough to win depending on what state the monster's in. It's even harder here because of how ferocious and dangerous and emboldened the Butcher is. Then we have our other big key mechanic. This is Infectious Lunacy, which is what these fun tokens are for. Whenever you suffer brain damage, you gain lunacy tokens equal to the damage suffered. So if you take 1 brain damage, you gain 1 token. If you take 3 brain damage, you gain 3 tokens. Whenever you have 3 plus lunacy tokens, so at the point that you've resolved any cards and you go, now I have 3, 4, 5, whatever lunacy tokens, you get rid of all of them, and you suffer the frenzy brain trauma. That gives you plus 1 speed and plus 1 strength. You can't use fighting arts, you ignore slow or melee weapons, etc, etc. It's kind of how the survivors can scale to take out the Butcher, but because it's frenzy, this is cutting off your survival actions, or at least spending survival to use them. So early on, fighting a Butcher, spend all your survival. Just spend it like there's no tomorrow, because there might not be, and eventually you are going to get cut off from it. So if you get frenzied very quickly, and you lose like 4 or 5 survival, that's a significant chunk, because the Butcher's basically eliminated it, unless you have anti-frenzy tools, or you have something like Red Fist that can let you at least do survival actions using the strength tokens. This is also a lot of bookkeeping on top of fast target and additional AI cards, so you're kind of getting the impression Nemesis monsters are more complex. They're doing more things, there's more things to keep track of. It really is the case. You might forget occasionally. Don't sweat it. Kingdom Death is a complicated game. Things get missed. If you've missed it and nothing, you can wind back to fix things, do that. If not, you just got to roll with it. For good or for bad, that's how it happens. Speaking of bad, we have the Butcher's Invincible trait. So this turns up on the level 3 plus Butcher. And when the Butcher is wounded, you roll a d10, and on the result of an 8 plus, the wound roll fails. So that's an 8, 9, or a 10. That means 30% of the time, no matter what you roll, the wound roll is going to fail. This used to be 50% of the time it triggered. That was a nightmare. 30% still is pretty brutal. We're looking at a Butcher with 22 wounds required here. And now we're saying a third of our successful wounds will fail. That's about, on average, 7 or 8 additional wounds required. So we're looking at dealing 29 to 30 successful wounds against the level 3 Butcher. That's a slog. There's not a lot you can do about it, really. You just need to be able to last the distance and survive a marathon. We'll come to all of this a bit later, and I'll talk about how this changes everything, because there's a bunch of additional bits. And instead, let's get on to our AI cards. So here we have the AI cards laid out as I usually do, which is similar types in a column, and then the rows as you go down, where I think personally they're more dangerous, and wherever I have an opportunity to maybe control what AI cards are going to be in the later lap of the deck, I'll tend to leave the ones nearer the top where possible. It also helps to go through all these and really understand what the Butcher is doing. So we'll begin with here, what I think are its softest attacks. These are same. Butcher's got a number of double attacks where it's 2 cards to do the same thing. Hack is just a weaker version of the basic action. Statistically, it's the same: 2 speed, 4+ accuracy, 1 damage, and 1 bleed after damage. But the targeting here is closest threat facing and then closest threat. So if you remember, up on the basic action is closest survivor. These, on the other hand, even if you're closer, if you're not a threat, the Butcher will ignore you. So Fecal Salve can play very well into helping target the Butcher where the Butcher's going to target. And you'll see that a lot as we go through the other attacks. So just absolutely fine. Hack is its basic attack. Sure, it's still quite scary in many ways, but it is wildly inaccurate, and you should be able to manage 2 bleed a turn fairly well because bandages just cost a hide. Right, on our middle section, we've got a bunch. So first of all, we got 2 Hues. Hue, very soft early in a fight with the level 1 because it's only 1 speed, but this does become more dangerous as the Butcher levels up, and at the point where Infectious Lunacy has disabled your ability to perform survival actions, this can get very scary. Although again, against level 1, having a shield early is fantastic. The Gorm and the Frog Dog both offer a excellent shield that's not too expensive, so you have options to get a shield without having to rush leather if you're playing beyond just the White Lion. Hues, again, closest threat facing, closest threat. We'll see this a lot. I'll comment where it isn't the same, but going ahead, if it's that kind of targeting, I'll just say that's the usual targeting. 1 speed, 3+ accuracy, 3 damage, and bleed and bash. So 1 point bleed again, and bash. At higher levels, you should have access to leather armor, or you should have completed Fist and Tooth, so the bash isn't too bad. And even at the lowest level, being knocked down isn't a major issue because for the most part the Butcher will then ignore you and go for another target. It's less likely to chain its attacks on you, which is fine. But 3 damage is scary. Yeah. If that hits an unarmored survivor, that's straight to a Sphere Injury. If you're wearing rawhide armor, even on the head will get you straight to a heavy. So this is a big hitting attack, and it's more accurate than some of the others. That's the scary parts of it, but it is mostly manageable. Then we've got 2 Wild Calves. Standard attacking, and actually the standard attack profile. So these again are extra bits of extra versions of Hack, but the additional thing we have at the end is another flow step, and then all survivors adjacent to the monster suffer 1 damage to a random hit location and gain 1 bleeding token. So as I sort of hopefully mentioned earlier, one of the key ways of handling the Butcher is to use reach and range as much as possible. But even if you can't do that, standing in a way that when the Butcher comes at whatever its target is, nobody else will be adjacent is a very effective and easy thing to do. For the most part, you know who the Butcher's going to target, closest threat and facing. So you can tell the space which the Butcher is going to be stepping into, and you don't want anyone adjacent to that space apart from its target. So a little bit harder hitting than Hack, as long as you handle it that way. You know, handle it by thinking about where the Butcher is going to be standing and not being adjacent at the start of end of its movement. You know what? It is best I just very quickly demonstrate this because I'm trying to explain it. So if we have a survivor like this, and we have one like this, and then we have one like this, and say, one like this, the Butcher is going to choose closest threat in facing, and so we choose Zachary, and it's going to run here, do his hack, well, his wild carve, and then Alistair's going to get hit coincidentally. So if we want to avoid that and we want to be smart, we could have Alistair be here if Alistair's playing like a support role and bandaging Zachary, or if Alistair's attacking with a reach weapon. This isn't any good because again, if there, but if Alistair was here, or even here, At this point now, he's out of the way of the Butcher. So this is what I'm talking about. You just think about it, you just go, okay, well, I know how the Butcher's going to target. It wants closest threat in facing for the most part. So it's going to be Zachary here. And these others are probably safe. You may find that if Zachary gets knocked down, the second AI card may do more, but it's very hard to control for both AI cards. That's a lot of chaos. So this is a kind of important positioning thing you want to be thinking about. You absolutely do not want to be like fighting like this, ever. You know, fighting on the flanks further back and then having your designated tanking survivor move backwards so the Butcher does a little bit of forward movement is very important and very, very helpful. So that's kind of where position does sort of matter. Then we got kick and infinite kick. So basically the same thing, except originally the Butcher had 2 kick cards instead of this infinite kick. Kick will go to a basic action and it won't chain kicks endlessly over and over because it's not drawing another AI card. Kick itself, standard targeting, nearly standard attack profile. The trigger is knockback 5 and priority target token instead of bleed 1, and basically so the Butcher will kick the target, kick them backwards, and then because the priority target token, they'll run in and do target the kicked survivor with their basic action. Infinite kick, a little bit different. So infinite kick was reintroduced because you're not supposed to, if you had like kicks in the deck and you had nothing else left, you're not supposed to infinitely chain kicks, but some people were doing that by accident. So after Adam saw that, one kick was updated to infinite kick. This will infinitely chain round and round and round and keep going. So this is pretty scary. You do have a number of ways of handling it, but essentially if you see after the first lap that infinite kick is still sat in the deck, rawhide headbands are fairly easy to get your hands on, and you can use them proactively by looking at the top cards of the monster's deck. If you see infinite kick, you bop it up to the top so you can remove it with a wound. If you can't remove it with a wound, you could then push it downwards. So, but remember, that's not ideal because it's still going to perform the kick as its second action, so that it'll be doing 3 area cards. You just need to be very careful with how this is, and you do not want to have infinite kick be the last card in the deck because you probably don't have any capability to surge. So it's your responsibility to make sure this thing doesn't get to the last card standing, because then it will loop itself round and round and absolutely wreck you, as opposed to instead going to basic action and ending the loop, quote unquote loop. So get rid of this. Don't let it be there. Really don't. Ever. You have the tools. Rawhide Headband is available for everyone. You can handle that. And if you aren't able to Rawhide Headband and you know it's in the deck, don't remove the penultimate card. Leave 2 in the deck. So you can try and burst the monster down with 2 wounds in a single turn. You know, don't ever be like, oh, well, we got kick and backhand in the deck left. Oh, well, I'll just attack. You're taking a 50-50 on getting infinitely kicked. So, no. Backhand. All survivors in the impact zone. So this is another one of those ones where the Butcher isn't moving. So if you're fighting with reach weapons and you've stepped your tank back at least 1 space, this is going to do nothing, which is why I haven't put it all the way down in the most dangerous category. By the way, Infinite Kick nearly got itself into the most dangerous category. Technically it should be, but I wanted to kind of pair it with Kick, so this one, yeah, it can be really scary. Anyway, so we got 1 speed, 4+ accuracy, 2 damage, but it's hitting every single survivor, boom, boom, boom. They'll get knockback 5 and bashed if they take the damage. The main thing here is, if you get into good habits and good with the Butcher, which is everybody they stay away from base contact with the Butcher. They make sure the Butcher starts his turn having to move to someone as opposed to already being adjacent to someone. Or, you know, if that one person adjacent has a shield, that's fine. Yeah, so kind of big thing I'm saying here is King Spear, bow, catgut bow, stuff like that's great against the Butcher to mitigate these kind of things. And that goes as you get further and further ahead. Against a level 2 Butcher, you still have access to reach weapons and similar, so that's all good things that you can use. We're on to the big scary scaries now. Okay, so we've got 6, 2 of which are the same. Double hack. It's hack, but doubled. So usual targeting, but it has 4 speed, and it deals 2 bleeding after a hit, which means if double hack is in play, the Butcher could potentially dish out 3 bleed in a turn. So it becomes very important to not leave a survivor on 2 bleed at any times. So that's the main thing here. Other than that, the best tools are what they are, which is good evasion and blocking 1 hit at least. But mostly, double hack is about cleaning the bleed off before and then getting rid of it afterwards. Lantern Hunger is, I think, the Butcher's most unpredictable card. And this is a neat little bit of sort of reference of how Butchers can kind of, they have some sort of connection to lanterns. They can use them to teleport around. So the Butcher disappears in a flash of light, reforming from the glow of Survivor's lantern. That survivor, which is the furthest survivor, is doomed. They go adjacent. If you can't do that, the card gets discarded. It's very hard to actually engineer a situation where the survivor that is targeting can't have anything placed adjacent to them. They would need to generally be on a board edge and have other survivors or terrain similar obstructing spaces, and it needs to be non-destructible terrain. So yeah, the actual attack profile, on top of being doomed, which is pretty scary, is like double hack in that it's 4 speed, 4+ accuracy, 1 damage. But you get the priority target token, so usually this means you're going to take another hit either within the same Butcher's turn, or you'll be taking the first hit in the next round. Nice thing about the first hit in the next round, of course, is that means you know where the Butcher's going as its target, and you know the Butcher's movement is 5, so you can position yourself out of reach to evade that particular attack. And then the priority token would be removed, and the Butcher will resume normal targeting, which, if you've positioned a second survivor well, you can take advantage of that. So to demonstrate, let's go back over here very quickly. Let's put our Butcher back here. Okay, so we have our doomed. Okay, so Zachary. So it's teleported and appeared. We pick this side. Okay, we get the choice of where it's going to land, so we pick the side for this way. Attack Zachary, let's say Zachary gets away with that, now he has the priority target token. So we know the Butcher's movement is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, given we know that, we know that we can get here, and if we got the survival, or we got leather boots or something, and we can just squeeze out an extra space, we know the Butcher is going to get to here and fail to connect and do a second AI card. If we have a tank, we could even go as far as then moving our support, our targeted, our weak survivor behind, 1 step behind our tank. So on the second AI card, it steps in and targets here, boop, instead of targeting here. I hope that makes sense. It's just one of those things to sort of think about, and it's very interesting because this is one of the times prior to where you have really good knowledge of what the Butcher's going to do for its first, well, its target for its first action because of the priority target. Next, my favourite card in the entire deck, Hack City, is really funnily named. It is a double hack that just keeps going. Again, really the only way to mitigate this is to have as much evasion as possible. Beyond that, it's outpacing it. It's very difficult to completely no-sell this. So beyond just avoiding this via enough evasion that the attacks miss or taking a minimal amount of damage, there's another interesting little wrinkle to this, which is you've got a flow step and then a separate thing. So this is not tied to the attack. This isn't after damage if the target survives Hack City Legendary Lungs. This is if the target survives Hack City. So if you're targeted by Hack City and you dash to outpace the Butcher, or if you're just out of range of the Butcher from the start and he walks towards you and you're like, well, you haven't got to me, you still get to resolve Legendary Lungs. Which we can go take a quick little look at Legendary Lungs now. It's a fun event, and Legendary Lungs is one of those secret fighting arts that has a lot. It's good, it's powerful, it's also referenced in a number of other things. So, Legendary Lungs. The sensation of the Butcher's attack is similar to drowning. Desperately you gasp for air only to be met with a mouthful of steel. Which admittedly feels weird if you've completely out of reach evaded this attack, but the rules are what they are. You follow the rules. Maybe in the future Hack City will get reworked a bit to kind of take into account for this, but I don't think it really matters anyway. Monsters' attacks rain down on you, each blow faster than the last. Despite the attack lasting only a moment, things seem to slow down. You feel numb and isolated, as if trapped in an endless body of water. There is no hope of escape, just the pressure from above on your gasping lungs. As the pounding in your chest intensifies, you recall the even rhythms of the monster's heaving chest. There is a chance you will learn something. So, we'll roll the dice, d10. On a 1 or a 2, we don't get anything, just dissociate away and learn nothing further. On a 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, we feel as if we are at the cusp of realising something big. It teases your mind before vanishing. Significantly, if we've innovated drums, and drums is a very good innovation which is worth picking up early because it gives you access to Rhythm Chaser, which is amazing against the Butcher, and Synchronized Strike, which can help you wound the Butcher. These are both key, very powerful tools. Anyway, if you've innovated drums, 4, 5, 6 or 7 immediately becomes 8, 9 or 10, so really good. 8, 9 or 10 is the deep breath. It seems crazy, but it makes perfect sense to you. The secret of the monster's attack is its amazing control over its breathing. Despite its anger, the rise and fall of its chest keeps a constant, steady rhythm. Even at the height of its brutal fury, you gain the Legendary Lungs secret fighting art and +3 survival. And here it is. So, Legendary Lungs has this really cool artwork of the Butcher. I really like this section clipped here and how it's been cut. It's really cool. Once per attack, for each successful hit, make an additional attack roll. So that is something that gets around slow, which is very useful. It can also be utilised with high speed weapons to do a lot of damage, especially if you've got ones that have incredibly good perfect hit triggers. So this is a very strong fighting art, secret fighting art. It also has a bunch of other uses. Outside of it, you'll find the places which say if the survivor has legendary lungs, then they get an extra benefit. So the main thing you're looking to do is out of reach evade this if you can, to dash, cancel it or similar. If not, hopefully you've got a good amount of evasion, but again, the targeting of Hack City is this bog standard closest threat facing, closest threat, and both of those don't care if you're in range or not. So absolutely you can take advantage of that. Then we've got Devour Lantern. So this dooms the target, is closest threat facing in range. It's a standard attack at 2 speed, 4+ accuracy and 1 damage, but the trigger is terrifying. It is target loses their lantern, they gain -3 accuracy tokens and lose all survival. If this is the last remaining survivor, they die. So, interesting, the survivor dies so close to the edge of the settlement. You'd think they would there'd be sufficient light, but it seems that's not the case. There's something else going on, maybe. Who knows? But key thing here is -3 accuracy tokens and loss of all that survival. If you are infectious lunaseed already, the survival loss isn't so much of a big deal, but the -3 accuracy tokens can be a killer unless you've got a survivor who can do things even if their accuracy is terrible. Eventually, if the fight goes on long enough, you'll get enough speed that you'll overcome this kind of bad accuracy, just through weight of numbers, that old quality versus quantity. You know, you can have a good quantity of low quality attacks in Kingdom Death as long as they've got good strength or good luck. Good strength in the case of the Butcher, you'll do great. It's really bad if this does hit sort of one of your DPS survivors, but it is standard targeting. If you've gotten yourself in a position where one of your damage dealers is in the facing of the Butcher, something's either gone wrong with the hit locations or you've messed up. If something went wrong because of the hit locations, there's not much you could have done to handle that, but if you've somehow put your DPS survivor in closest threat and facing and the Devour Lantern is drawn and hits them, that's kind of your fault, really. You know, as opposed to bad luck. Now, this is one we really don't want to see later on, because if it starts hitting multiple survivors or the numbers start falling and you've got only a few survivors left, it can be really bad and you can end up in a point where you need to roll perfect 10s to do anything. Finally, we've got what I think is the scariest card in the deck, and it's not even really close for me. That is Bite. So this has standard targeting, and this has a standard attack profile, except that it doesn't deal damage. Instead, after you're hit, it deals a random severe head injury. So it ignores your armor. It ignores your injury boxes. It goes straight to a severe head injury, and that is a 40% chance of you just dying. An early bite can be a nightmare, because if your tank is unfortunate and gets hit, they could be in a really, really rough spot, and losing a survivor very quickly to the Butcher, opening its cavernous maw and biting your face off, or even your entire head, is like not good. Really, there's not a huge amount of counterplay beyond the usual block, dodge, evasion, but Drydocanthus is a thing that will prevent the first severe injury you suffer in Showdown and then get discarded. So have some Drydocanthus on your survivors to try and soak these early bites, and then hopefully you can remove them when they come in the next lap through the AI deck. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Or at least if somebody does get bitten, you're kind of at the point where maybe they don't die. There's a few options here and there that do give you extra roll, like +1 on severe injury rolls. Tough is a fighting art that covers it. I believe, if I remember correctly, the Dragon Armor Skull Helm also has +1 to severe head injuries, so you could look at things like that to try and help deal with bite. But ultimately, this is like, have something that stops you dying. The Gorm has a couple of potions that can prevent this, like the life potion will trigger and just, prevent death from a head bite. It won't help you if your jaw gets shattered or you lose an eye, but at least it'll stop you dying. So that's the main thing, is be ready for this in advance. If the Butcher has both bites and it keeps drawing them and you don't manage to remove them as wounds, that's unfortunate, but you can't control chaos completely. Randomness sometimes will just get you. On to our Intimidates. I think this just one, it's kind of a mid-level one. It's roll 1d10 for each target. On a 4+, it's for 1 brain damage per monster level and is knocked down. So at level 1, this isn't too bad. Level 2 and 3, this can get people hit by infectious lunacy pretty quickly. It's not 100% accurate though. Knockdown is a little annoying, but if everyone gets knocked down, that's actually not too bad for the survivors because of how the Butcher's targeting focuses on closest threats. Generally, it will just then spend its next turn menacing you a bit before you get back on your feet, and then it starts trying to cut you to pieces again. So, it's a part of the reason why I'm like, just burn your survival early in the fight, spend it as much as you can, because once you suffer that frenzy, unless you have tools to get around it, you're going to lose your survival actions. Then we got our moods. So first of all, as I always try to note, we've got a very good tool to help us with moods. Let's summon it to the board. Oh, there she is. So, Whisker Harp. This isn't the only one, but mood control is very, very strong against many of the Nemesis monsters. And generally, taking out instruments to control monster mood is a little problematic because of how noisy reads a 1% chance of your survivor being deleted on the hunt phase per basic hunt event, which is actually quite high. That's not an issue against Nemesis monsters. We can bring this along. The survival gain, not quite so important, but this strum, which isn't an attack, so you can still have a fecal salve on and be untargetable, allows you to discard mood cards currently in play on a 6+. There's also whips that can do this kind of thing. They're a little bit more dependent on the survivor being able to hit and sometimes wound, but that's something else to look out for, various whips. The Butcher is a great example of how important mood control is, because there's quite a lot of these cards. First of all, I didn't click directly on that. We have up in the top section Screaming. I don't think this is particularly terrifying. One brain damage per monster level when it comes into play, and at the start of the turn the same. This is putting you on a clock of you're going to get hit round and round into frenzying. If you're worried about dying to brain damage against the Butcher, you can pick Accept Darkness over Collective Toil, and if you bring survivors who are pretty fresh and don't have any disorders, which is often how I like to play Nemesis fights anyway, I'll put together a B team of like, these survivors are good, but they don't have anything like super special, or they've not been out on hunts yet, so I'm going to send them in against Nemesis monsters. That's my B team. You can spend your survival before this like kicks in, and yeah, the only other sort of thing is, as I was saying, Accept Darkness helps you avoid dying to brain trauma quickly, and of course Survival of the Fittest can give you a reroll as well. So on the whole, I don't think this is too bad. It's basically trying to just kill survivors through increasing brain damage, but it pays off by giving survivors frenzy for that extra survival, extra speed, and extra strength. So it kind of eventually will pivot against the Butcher unless things get wildly out of control. Our mid section, there's two. First up, we got Embrace the Pain, which always makes me think of, I think it's a Dinosaur Jr. song I'm thinking of. Yeah, Feel the Pain by Dinosaur Jr. I just checked. This makes me think of that. When it comes to play, you draw an AI card, so it doesn't, like any kind of mood, it quote-unquote wounds the monster because it's removed it from its deck. But this doesn't slow the monster down at all. It's still going to hit you with 2 more cards. Whenever the Butcher's wounded, you place 1 token on this card, and then at the start of the monster's turn, if it's got 2+ tokens, you remove all of them in the basic actions. So leaving the monster on 1 token before its turn can be a smart move if you're like, oh well, maybe I shouldn't deal this wound because he's going to basic action and then do 2 normal attacks as well. The real fun trick, of course, is to just pile as many tokens as possible on in a turn, so you just get 1 basic action when it starts its turn. If it's got like 12 tokens on here somehow, it's not going to do basic action 6 times. It's going to do it just once. Otherwise, removing again with the Whisker Harp can be quite useful. For the most part, though, you just got to deal with this. And I tend, when playing physical, I have a second copy of all the Butcher's cards, and I will put an Embrace the Pain like on top of the hit location deck to remind me, hey, you got to trigger this if you wound anything. You can do that just by putting the single Embrace the Pain copy on top of the deck, or just putting it somewhere wherever you put your hit location cards to try and help remember it. It's a Nemesis monster. There's a lot more bookkeeping things you can forget. Then we've got Forbidden Light. So this one again gives you that AI card. It creates this radius around the Butcher in a zone 1, so not necessarily adjacent. It's adjacent plus the corners, as you can see. If you end your act in the light radius, you gain a -1 strength token, and at the end of each monster turn, you put a token on Forbidden Light as the light builds up. and then on 5+ tokens you discard it, and anyone who's gained any -1 strength tokens from Forbidden Light, they're removed. This isn't too bad. Sometimes you just have to step in, suck up the -1 strength and still go for your attack, but hopefully if you've been running reach weapons or you start your act adjacent to the Butcher, you can get your attack in and then step out of this space. And as I've mentioned before, you generally don't want to finish your turn adjacent to the Butcher if you can avoid it. So this is okay. It never goes away, so it's in the middle row for me because it's bookkeeping, and it can be awkward and difficult to remember this if you're playing with less people, or you're just not super focused, or you're streaming when playing, or recording. But otherwise it's not too bad, but it can feel awful if you've got the wrong weapon choices. And then down here we've got one card. It's Lantern Frenzy, which personally I think is it's up there with like Hack City and Infinite Kickers amongst the scariest of the AI cards. So this is a mood. When Lantern Frenzy comes into play, a random survivor gains the priority target token. It cannot be removed for any reason. So as long as Lantern Frenzy is in play, this priority target token cannot be removed. So the Butcher will keep targeting them. Then you draw an AI card, so you can be resolving the AI card. Its static effect on top of the locking the priority target onto one survivor is while Lantern Frenzy is in play, the Butcher gains +2 movement and +1 speed tokens, so it's going to 7 movement there. That's quite hard to dash cancel, to avoid, etc. And it gets +1 speed tokens. Now, you can technically partially kite the Butcher when it's doing this, because it's locked in on one target, but it's very, very difficult to do because of the fact that it's drawing 2 AI cards a turn, or even maybe 3, and it is so much higher on its move. You have this extra option. Anytime survivor with the priority target token may sacrifice themselves and lead the Butcher far away, they perish and their gear is archived in the showdown and immediately skip the aftermath. And then finally, you can also discard Lantern Frenzy if the survivor with the priority target token is killed. The only reason I would be taking this sacrifice is if the survivor who was targeted by this was basically naked or had utterly disposable gear that had already fallen off in its value to me. Most of the time this sort of reads a target survivor is going to die very quickly if you don't close this showdown out. It's worth mentioning though, the Whisker Harp and other move control can remove this, and then once that's done, after the next priority target attack on that survivor, the priority target token will be removed because Lantern Frenzy is no longer in play, so its text isn't performing. So this is a little extra safety insurance if Lantern Frenzy lands on the wrong survivor. That's all of its AI cards. The main strengths you're seeing here are high speed, the fact that it's drawing multiple AI cards a turn, the fact that it's dishing out bleed, and brain damage, and sometimes extra attacks through Embrace the Pain. The weakness primarily is its accuracy. 3+ accuracy is as good as it's getting here, although if we go back over and just remember there's this terrifying thing on the level 3 Butcher. But yeah, you need decent evasion early on, bleed control, and good soak. Plus, your frontline survivors who might get bitten really want to have some kind of prevention or mitigation against severe head injuries. Now we've got the hit location deck. So these are categorized a little differently. I've put them together by the broad category they land under, and then from top to bottom again is top stuff is what I think is the weakest within hit locations. Apart from this would be down here, but it's supposed to be here for convenience's sake. Same with this. Well, let's just kind of go through them all. First up, we've got our statics that always do the same thing. We have 2 cleavers. These are just wasted hits, but they do give you +1 insanity. That's particularly helpful against the level 1 Butcher because its brain damage isn't super high. so it can help keep you away from suffering brain traumas. And we've got the armoured pig shoulder, which is its left pauldron. So it's a big head. We confirm pigs in Kingdom Death, even if we've not seen them anywhere else. This is super dense. And because of the design of the Butcher with its fast target, you're gonna encounter this more often than normally. It's quite difficult to play the usual way of handling super dense, which is you wait until the super dense is in the discard pile and you start wailing with the frail weapons. That's not quite so effective. You can do it on a single turn, but otherwise you try not to use frail weapons, or if you're taking them, have backups, or if all else fails and you have it, you can hit control with the Cat Eye Circlet, or scouting from Wisdom Potion, or frog doggles. Have some kind of setup. Otherwise, maybe just don't take the weapon. Like if you've got one Zanbato and you've got no way of making another one, and it's really important for your setup plans, maybe don't take it against butchers. Then down here we should have one. Yep, this is the Furious Breastplate. It has +2 toughness to wound it, and if you roll a 10 on the wound, which is an automatic wound, you also suffer the blind severe head injury. It does remove a miniature from dreaded trophies if that's happened, which is, a small compensation, but ultimately this is harder to wound, and rolling that 10 comes with quite a drawback. I'll usually place this one further back in my queue of things to attack. I'll put it near the end in case the attack ends earlier. I'm perfectly happy with that, because even with the level 1 Butcher normally is at 9, and that's 11. 11 is a big number for Lantern Year 4. Next we've got our failures. Up the top here we just have the Furious Gauntlet. This is an Intimidate that works 50% of the time, and 1 brain damage per monster level, so it's another way it can get you closer to Infectious Lunacy and Frenzy, but it could be worse, like this. So the Furious Fan Braces, the failure, the Butcher lashes out with at the attacker's face with the back of his hand. You get a basic action that goes Headhunter. That's pretty bad. One of the few ways you can avoid this is by having a high enough ranged weapon that the Butcher will run at you and not reach you because his movement's not high enough. Otherwise, well, it's damage to the head, which is, it's not guaranteed like immediate severe head injury, but we kind of prefer to not have to take head damage as a reaction. Our wound reactions, we've got 2 here. The Furious Gut is great. If you wound, the Butcher is knocked down, and all survivors gain +1 courage, so this means it's on the floor and everyone can just smack it on a 3+ and ignore reactions. And remember that Indomitable comes into play for the level 3, so it's just one person who'll be able to score in an attack, but you can do some silly stuff with nesting attacks and things if you manage to set it up right. Failure, basic action targeting the attacker, worth the price. Butcher's Mask, wound, shocks the Butcher, knocking it off balance. It staggers, it has -2 toughness until the end of the round, so obviously you want this fairly early in the attack. Failure, you get shoved away, so it'll full move towards you, and if adjacent, it'll knock back you 5. This will end your attack if you're melee. If you're ranged, it might not, because if you should have enough range to still complete your attack, because the range is bigger than 5. Then we got so these are guaranteed, but this one, why are these here? These I think these are supposed to be over here, as their reflexes. I mean, this is kind of an interesting reflex version, because it's like wound and failure has 2 different triggers. I think that's really cool. I'd like to see it more on other monsters. I think it's sweet. Then we've got Furious Greaves, full move towards the attacker, don't move if already adjacent, very soft, very straightforward. And then we've got Furious Bellow here. These ones I think are all a little bit worse. This is if your death has the Butcher unleashes a deep guttural roar. Unless the attacker is deaf or has 3+ courage, they suffer brain damage to the monster's level and are knocked down. Not too bad. Your courage should climb up quite decently by the time you're fighting the higher level ones. 3+ courage is not too big a number to get to in the mid and end portions of your campaign. Thick Cape. Attacker rolls 1d10. If the result is greater than their courage, they suffer brain damage equal to the monster level. So this is stronger than this version. But again, courage can help mitigate it. Having good courage on your attacking survivors is very advisable, which makes sense considering that you're dealing with a screaming, slashing murderer. Furious Crown. The Butcher lashes out wildly, clearing a path for itself. All adjacent to the Butcher suffer bash. Reminder, leather ignores bash. And then you full move towards the furthest survivor. This doesn't matter if the survivor is a threat or not, so you can create opportunities where the Furious Crown triggers and the Butcher full moves towards a survivor who has a fecal salve, so they're not a threat, so it can't target them, which can buy you a nice little window if everyone else sort of steps out of range as well. So the Butcher will at least waste its first AI card of the turn. Finally, Furious Shoulder. Reflex, the Butcher spins violently, smashing everything around it. Zone of Death, so this is a Zone 1 attack. All survivors in Zone of Death suffer bash and knockback 5. Not automatically terrible, again, because of how the Butcher's targeting works. Being knocked clear and knocked down, especially if it happens to everyone, isn't a disaster, but again, you should be attacking with range and reach weapons, so this kind of thing doesn't get you. Then we got the Furious Scrag. So this is our death blow. If the Butcher is killed at this location, it is beheaded. Curiously, its lifeless body remains standing. It's too angry to drop. The survivors rejoice the moment changes into forever. Each survivor may select either a permanent +1 evasion or a permanent +1 accuracy. So if you're attacking survivor, +1 accuracy is amazing. If you're anything else, +1 evasion is absolutely what you want. You get +2 to the results of your roll on the Butcher's rewards in the aftermath, which I have forgotten. I've forgotten on camera. It happens. Last of all, we got this cool little extra thing, which is the only critable hit location. Critical wound, the Butcher is shocked. You may gain the Mighty Strike fighting art. And of course, this card didn't originally have a critical wound. But one video placed on YouTube, if anyone knows which one it is, please put the name of the channel and the title in the comments. That'd be super helpful to actually have this recorded. But anyway, they were fighting against the Butcher and they got the Butcher down to its last wound and threw a Founding Stone, which Founding Stone should just bounce off the Butcher, but they misunderstood the rules and scored a death blow kill on the Furious Skag with the Founding Stone. So Adam updated with a temporary printout version of the card, and then in 1.5 changed it permanently to retroactively make that kill count as legal, which I think was really cool. It's nice to see little references to things that have happened in the community just get acknowledged even in an oblique fashion like this. I think it's really sweet. Then we had our trap. Okay, so this trap isn't too bad. It is the Butcher explodes in a burst of ferocity with the overpower attack. The attacker is doomed, and all survivors in the zone of malice gain 1 bleeding token and suffer knockback 5. So again, this is what I'm talking about with don't end your turn next to the Butcher if you can avoid it, because you might suffer consequences. Then the basic action targets the attacker. The attacker's doomed, so there's not a lot they can do about that. But remember that the basic action does provide flow steps for others. There may be chances for survivors to get a few quick free extra stabs in by surging if they have the capability to do so still. So this is, I'd say it's a softer trap. It's a bit better than the White Lions one. It's definitely better than the Screaming Antelopes one, but it's nowhere near as good as many of the others that other Nemesis monsters and indeed Quarry monsters have. Okay, So, luckily we don't have too much to go through on resources, but we do have an entire variant butcher to talk about briefly. So, this is the Killenium Butcher. First thing to note, outside of, as I said before, this amazing sculpt, is this is a 3x3 monster. So that changes a lot. The monster has a bigger profile on the board. This means all of his zones are way larger because they're 5 on each side. And it also means that generally larger monsters are a little bit harder to get away from, because they effectively have just a little bit of extra movement. For example, compared the two, you can see just nice in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 for the normal butcher, with them both being standing in the same like top left row of H. So it does have an impact. You get a bunch of like extra rules in here, and it has its own. Let's don't look where you're at. Oh, don't look at that. There we go. You have a specific Killenium Butcher Showdown, which just defines the extra position and makes sure you have reference to all of these. So the basic action card. This is only ever a level 2 and level 3 monster, so you'll face normal butcher at level 1. But if I just grab the normal butcher card and pop it here, you can see how much of a climb up this is. Can we get them close to the level? One more try. Yeah, there we are. So we can see same number of wounds, but a slight increase towards advanced. Same movement, but again, the slightly larger base size does effectively mean it kind of has slightly higher movement than 5 in some situations. 13 toughness, which one higher. Then up here, 16 toughness. But the big difference is these traits. So we lose Frenzied Berserker, we lose Fast Target, we lose Dreaded Trophies, and we lose Infection. We keep Infection, sorry. And we also lose Frenzied Berserker down here, and Invincible Stays, which is not great, but what can you do? But we do lose Dreaded Trophies as well. That's because of how this butcher operates differently. So, baseline, a little bit tougher. The menace is also different. It turns to face the most survivors, and all survivors in the monsters facing suffer monster level brain damage, as opposed to just the closest survivor. And the attack, the base action attack, this is where the gimmick really kicks in. So I'll come back to that in a moment. We're going to sort of talk about how Scorn works. So instead of Fast Target, we don't have that. And we don't have Dreaded Trophies. These still come into play. But replacing that is Scorn. And this is a trait that has the Killenium Butcher devour the intensity of passion from the very air. As it grows stronger, the survivors suffer these chilling effects for each +1 damage token the monster has. Here, 1, -1 accuracy. Here, -1 movement. Here, you can either, at the start of your act, gain your movement or your attack. You ignore this effect if you're frenzied. Now, the key thing here is the Butcher, the Killenium Butcher, starts to strip frenzy off these survivors. So the whole cycle it's going through is it triggers frenzy as per normal, and then instead of letting the survivors build it up, whenever it does a basic action, you can see here, if you're frenzied, the monster devours your rage. You're no longer frenzied. Transfer any attribute tokens gained from frenzy to the monster, changing +1 strength for +1 damage tokens. So if you just triggered and gained frenzy, it gets +1 speed and it pops +1 damage token into this slot, triggering chill. If it does it again, it'll get another speed and put it on cold. If you had 5 speed and 5 damage, 5 strength, sorry, it'll strip them off you and get 5 speed and 5 damage tokens. So suddenly you're not always constantly frenzied, it's kind of building up, and then when the Butcher takes it away from you, it gets a big old power boost and And you'll see that this freeze kicks in and out as you get frenzied and you lose it again. This is a tough one to navigate at times. Generally, you sort of want to have the basic actions going at someone who isn't frenzied. So you're rewarded having a bit more of a kind of jack of all trades party with multiple survivors able to run on the front line. Luckily, this doesn't turn up at level 1, it's level 2+, so you should have some time to prepare. We also have Self-Aware. At the start of the monster's turn, you reveal the top card of the AI deck. If it's a B card, a basic card, you discard it. And then you go. So there's a slightly lower chance that the monster will perform basic actions. If it draws a basic action with its second attack, then it will. But if it flips into an advance, it will happily do that. Or if it draws an advance first, it'll stick with that. And then at the end of each monster turn, we perform a basic action, which is, as I mentioned before, this. So we've got this monster that it's not running like Berserker and Frenzied Berserker. It'll have Berserker at level 3. Instead of having 2 AI cards, instead of having 2 AI cards, it will do this trick of trying to improve the quality of its first card drawn and then basic actioning with the second card, or against level 3 it'll do try and improve the AI card on the first draw, then do its second draw, and then basic action. And this is how it keeps being threatening of stripping away speed and strength tokens to power itself up. It also has an alternative trap, Blast Chill. So this will replace Overpower. All survivors are doomed. The Killenium Butcher's coursing rage causes a sharp drop in temperature. The cold is shocking. All survivors within 3 spaces of the monster suffer bash unless they're wearing full gear. So suddenly it's very fur gear. It can become more difficult to manage to mitigate this, but you can get like fur accessories onto survivors if you want to mitigate that on top of, say, someone else wearing leather, other ways of ignoring bash, or recovering from bash with fist and tooth specialization. An ominous chill rises from the ground. All knockdown survivors are frozen with fear. They suffer monster level brain damage and cannot stand for any reason until the end of the next monster's turn. So as we see there, that locks out what I was just talking about, which is funny, but yeah, hang on. So then we have Blast Chill. This is a replacement trap instead of Overpower. It does a very interesting set of things. So all survivors are doomed. The Killenium Butcher's coursing rage causes a sharp drop in temperature. The cold is shocking. Any and all survivors within 3 spaces of the monster suffer bash unless they're wearing fur gear. So there are fur accessories and you still can get bash immunity with leather, but this actually shuts off some of the other kind of tricks like Encourage and Fist and Tooth, because an ominous chill rises from the ground. All knocked down survivors are frozen with fear. They suffer monster level brain damage, so 2 or 3, and cannot stand for any reason until the end of the next monster's turn. So you can't encourage them up, they can't kip up with Fist and Tooth, and, you know, suck it up. And then it'll perform a basic action targeting the attacker, even if the attacker's knocked down. This also has a big change to how the monster feels to fight, because once you've got Blast Chill in the deck, you also don't have, there it is, Fast Target. This is gone. So the Butcher isn't reshuffling, it's playing a bit more like a normal monster, but what it does, instead of making the trap chaotic to deal with, it gives inevitability to Blast Chill. This is going to turn up eventually and cause you severe problems. I think it's very, very cool how that's done. So just briefly to demonstrate what I mean by that. The standard Butcher, if we just flip this, you know, start of each Butcher turn, it'll get shuffled. So on your turn then you'll just be like, okay, let's do our attacks, and here's our like 4 hits that we've scored. Okay, no trap. Boom, 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 and then those will all go back into the deck for a reshuffle. And repeat the process, etc., etc. You know, there's no trap again, etc. But when it's over, when it's blast chill instead, suddenly we're back to the normal experience of going through the deck and gradually dealing with every single hit location until we hit the trap. That has a big change to the context of this. So boom, there would be our blast chill there, and then we would reset. It absolutely makes the Butcher feel like a different enemy to fight. I think it's fantastic. We also have 2 additional advanced cards, True Name and Gaze of Truth. I tend to just stick these into the normal Butcher's deck as well, because I think they're cool and interesting. It's nice to have more Intimidates. Whether that's official or not, I'm not entirely clear on, but I like it. I put the Mountain Lions AI cards into my standard White Lion deck for the same reason, because it a bit more variety. True Name, survivor with the fewest lunacy tokens is intimidated. The monster speaks your name, you suffer 3 brain damage and erase your name or die. So if you get True Named a second time, you don't have a name, because you can't give yourself like a name there. If you're quixotic, you cannot erase your name. So, you know, the True Name would kill Don Quixote. Quixotic. Then we have Gaze of Truth, which I think is a really cool name thing. Closest threat facing the range, closest threat. It looms over the target mere inches from their face with a move and intimidate. If it's adjacent to the target, you roll 1d10 on 3+, the monster suffers brain damage equal to the monster level, is knocked down, gains +2 understanding, and gains a random disorder. So, this is a great card. I really, really like it. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, is that in part of the main deck or not? So there's something I can't quite remember when you sort of put things together. You know, I'm going to quickly... Yeah, I've just taken a few minutes, and my bad. I was wondering where this was earlier. This is actually a normal Butcher card. So let's just talk about it here. Whoopsie. You know, what can you do? So Gaze of Truth is this category for me. It's pretty soft. Butcher looms over the target mere inches from their face. If adjacent, you roll dice to 3+, you suffer brain damage equal to the monster's level. Knockdown, gain +2 understanding, gains a random disorder. So this card is one of the few ways left that you can max out a survivor's understanding in a single showdown. You basically run it. If the monster gets down to Gaze of Truth with nothing else left, what you can do is just stick somebody adjacent to it, and as long as they don't die to the brain damage, which can be mitigated through things like other survivors having screaming horns to replenish brain insanity, or having accept darkness, etc., you can essentially allow the Butcher to endlessly menace with Gaze of Truth one particular survivor until they reach max understanding, and then engineer things to put the next one in. You can play to do this by very carefully pruning everything else out of the AI deck, or this can randomly happen during play. It's an opportunity. It's not a Killennium card. The Killenium Butcher comes with 3 extra AI cards, but they're this, and this. So I accidentally put it in the wrong pile when setting up. So that's fine. It is what it is. Ultimately, the Killenium Butcher feels very different from the normal Butcher, and I really, really like it. I like it a lot. Anyway, coming down here, we've got our rewards. So these on the top, this is Killenium Butcher specific. This is the normal one. So you've got the Butcher Cleaver, that you can get 2 of them. You'd have to get them from 2 different fights. They're a weapon melee axe other, so no saviors. 2 speed, 5+ accuracy, 5 strength. Paired, they're sentient, so you must be insane to activate them, and they're irreplaceable, so if you die holding them, you have to archive them. And there's also the Forsaker Mask, which we'll get to in a moment. Then there is the Killenium Butcher versions, so you have the Killenium Cleaver versions. These are more accurate at 4. They're Axe and Cleaver. These don't have the Cleaver keyword, which I think kind of needs to be addressed. They are paired and irreplaceable. You get +4 strength when attacking with these while frenzied. So unlike normal Butcher's Cleavers, these can scale for a lot longer. It's very difficult to get both and run them paired in a point where it actually matters. I think personally that really you should be allowed to pair a Killenium Cleaver with a Butcher Cleaver, and this should have the Cleaver keyword. Because otherwise you can't ever get 2 normal Butcher Cleavers, and if we just get to the rewards, you get your Killenium Cleaver at level 2 and one at the level 3. That's quite a long while before you get the level 3 one, so it's very difficult to use these paired. And by the time you would do, they're useless, really. I mean, honestly, outside of maybe in combination with the imitation Butcher armor from the Gambler's Chest. Okay, so speaking of cleavers, this is the specialization that comes in the Butcher, the Killenium Butcher box. It is gained here after a victory. Any victorious survivor may immediately select cleaver weapon proficiency regardless of age milestones. That's the only way you can get it outside of having a family passed down use, because you can't normally pick this due to the fact that it's novel. It says at a specialist level you can use cleaver proficiency while frenzied. When attacking with a cleaver, ignore 1 wound reaction during that attack. There's a number of different things. This is similar to Qatar specialization. It's very good. It's very good. And then Mastery. At the end of your attack with a cleaver, you suffer the Frenzy Brain Trauma, which is cool. That will scale up your speed and your strength. When attacking with a cleaver, if you draw the trap, you discard 5 of the drawn hit locations to cancel the trap and shuffle it back into the deck. Really cool how this supports just scaling your speed up massively and going nuts. Going really crazy. The only shame is that this weapon is like 9 strength if you're frenzied, which is not quite good enough considering when we get this this second cleaver. But cleavers are a fun and interesting weapon type, and I would like to see more of them, so I don't have major complaints. I would just like for the to not have to house rule in order to be able to run paired like this for a while and then finally upgrade to this. The other things we get, these are all unlocked via the Killenium Butcher Showdown. These are lanterns of specific characters who have died long in the past. They're all very interesting. They all come with some affinities, and they're themed around the vignette characters for which the faces have come from. Brave's Light is when you're encouraged to gain +1 strength token once per round with an up red and a right blue. That's good affinities. Red's Light, which is red is ire. Red's Light is during the aftermath, if you have a red, green and blue, and it does it down green, you gain +1 weapon proficiency if applicable, so you will level up faster with Red's Light. Hollow's Light has an up green, left green, right green, gives you -1 evasion, but if you have puzzle green +4 other greens, then you get to ignore the first severe injury you suffer each round. There are builds that really appreciate that. It's very good with Gormant Armor. Again, Gormant Armor is very much the severe injury set. And then we've got Forgot's Light, has no affinities, sentient, activation limit 3. This is place the top card of the hit location discard pile on top of the hit location deck. This is my favourite of them. This is a unique and very powerful and fun hit location control ability to let you re-wound a location, or try and re-wound a location that you failed at or succeeded at previously. It's really sweet. It's the one I want to get. These are all gained through the victory stuff. That's random trophy lantern gear here, along with the courage game for rewards. And then last of all, it is last, yeah, the Forsaker Mask. So this is gained if you roll high enough on the victory. It is a 2 armor point head, item, mask, metal, other, with unique, irreplaceable and accessory keywords. During the aftermath, if you wear this, you run off into the darkness, never to be seen again, so you don't wear this ever. The old one used to be really good, like too good. was effectively giving players an extra attack activation surge every turn, kind of like an extra lightning bolt every turn. They nerfed it, but they nerfed it to the point that you just never wear this unless you're taking it into the very final battle of the entire thing. I thematically think it's cool that you effectively turn into a Forsaker if you wear this, and this is the really neat like key link between between Butchers and Forsakers. But the main reason is you're just going to archive this and build the Mask Maker location, which is this. I've done a full Mask Maker and You video on this, on like which ones of these are great. The answer is this one, this one, this one, and the others are okay. And you get to fight the legendary monsters. It's a really cool location. You always want to get it because it's sweet and it's difficult to get. You don't have a lot of control, but the Death Blow will help you get to this Forsaken Mask more often. And that's it. So first of all, apologies about messing up with the AI cards. It's a little difficult when they're all stuck together and I can't look at like a full itinerary picture of them. The store doesn't work that way, so I put Gaze of Truth in the wrong thing. As soon as I started reading it, I was like, this is a normal Butcher thing, not Killennium specific. But yeah. Let's wrap up with a little talk of what our sort of final things to take away from all this are. So, the Butcher feels like a very intimidating, scary, dangerous opponent. Rolls a lot of extra dice. It's attacking twice a turn, but it's not unbeatable. And if you prepare for it in the years heading up, which is what you should be doing, you will thrive. The Butcher's primary attack vectors is wild, multiple amounts of attacks, brain damage, and bleed. Inaccurate attacks can be made more inaccurate with evasion. Rawhide should be a first port of call. Then a couple of organs for monster grease. If you can get a second Rawhide set, actually fantastic as well, even if it's not completely full. Having 2 survivors able to switch and take hits, absolutely wonderful. Shield, great if it's an option for you to craft early. That depends on your quarry monsters. Mood control, also fantastic. Against the normal Butcher, it is better to have hit location scouting than hit location manipulation. Manipulation can be used to try and increase the odds of you getting the death blow, and you can even bring a founding stone along to just cheekily guarantee that death blow if you have space on your gear grids. Bandages are your biggest friend. You absolutely want to have at least one set, probably just one at level against the level 2. You might, against level 1, sorry, you might consider having a second one against the level 2. If you're having trouble with the Butcher giving too much speed to your survivors and you're hitting into the trap a lot, it is worth noting that Frenzy does not increase the speed of slow bows. It only disables slow on melee weapons, so a bow like the arc bow can be fantastic against the level 2 and higher Butcher, because it doesn't matter how much you get frenzied, all you're benefiting from is a big pile of extra strength, and the arc bow has incredible range. Other bows are available. The other thing is, as I've talked a few times about, try and maintain your insanity levels where possible. If you're having trouble with that, get Accept Darkness, and try to attack the Butcher from at least one space away, or attack and then move backwards. And finally, remember that for the most part, whoever you stick closest in front of the Butcher, that is probably who they're going to be attacking, and they will likely attack them twice unless an unusual AI card is drawn or that particular survivor gets knocked down by the attack, in which case they might go for another close survivor. All survivors knocked down, they're not threats, it won't target them with its usual AI cards most of the time. And if you have a fecal salve and you've covered your face in pulp, like Alistair, then it usually will not target you for the whole showdown, and you can take advantage of that if you've got great actions that help the group. And I think last of all, just don't get infinite kicked. You know? You be aware of it. Try and play around it. And that's it. That's the Butcher. I think this is still one of the best Nemesis monsters. And amazingly, one of the few things that surpassed it is the Killenium Butcher, but that is a Butcher with additional refinement improvements. This is one of the finest Nemesis monsters, period. This is such a well-designed Nemesis monster, because it's building off an incredibly well done, and I've said it in the reviews and I've written it in reviews, but I do just want to once again stress that the Killenium Butcher is a masterclass in using a few cards to completely recontextualize and change a showdown and give you a monster that is familiar but behaves entirely differently. I think it's absolutely wonderful. You know, don't fear the Butcher. Come to embrace the pain, you know. And that's it. So if you've listened this far all the way to the end, this is probably going to be about an hour and a half, I imagine. Thank you for listening. If you like this, comments, likes and all that jazz. If you want to see more of these, support on my Patreon at the pillar tier helps me keep going on these, because while I don't have to buy some of the stuff, thanks to Adam's kind letting me have a master key, I do have to pick up the promotional content extra, so I have to pay for that anytime I want to review it, and it's basically me paying for it like a second or even sometimes third time in order to review it digitally. So that's all greatly appreciated, but as always, support with what you can afford to support. Times are tough all round, so you know, I appreciate the watch. And I'm starting to ramble because I don't really want to end this, but I guess I do have to close this chapter on the Butcher, so pens down, and I will see you next time. Bye.